I'm sure they'll have their own opinions once you take them off. I know, man. One of the guitarists we've got for this new band is Russian, and I tried speaking to him, and it was just so bad. It was like, dude, like half the things you're saying aren't actual words. What are you trying to say? Yeah, the last one's the one that ITO'd. Are we live? Of course. Are we live already then? No, no 3 to 1, just midway through the conversation, like a proper real podcast. Excellent. This is the natural feel. We'll see what happens. Yeah. So the new guidance for the essay book has come out, right? So that's what we're doing. It's really thorough. I was first of all, that's my first good impression is that this is a big document, right? Compared to the kind of bits and pieces we've seen for the other books. Yeah, yeah, because that's I guess when they're making the new books, the three generic playstyles guide how the book will play mechanically, and that's because we're gamers more than we are really fluff bunnies, right? So the three playstyles are probably the foundation of everything else. Oh, I think those things, that questionnaire is a guide, but I think it's largely been dropped, and those playstyles are not quite as narrow as they were in that questionnaire because there were only about seven or eight playstyles originally. But here you can see one of them isn't even like a standard thing. So I mean, the mixed arms is kind of standard. So let's go through these three, and I'll explain what I mean. So Styleways is mixed arms, which is saying strong infantry core, and then supported by, frankly, support pieces, which is going to be monsters, magic, and a little bit of chaff. Um, Basically, every army in Ninth Age has one that's worded like this, which is your basic infantry block, right? Because that's what Ninth really is. I think the exception is obviously Kingdom of Aquitaine, but everybody else. I mean, I think I mean ogres their basic playstyle, like one of the basic three is definitely blocks. They just happen to be monstrous infantry, but they work in a similar fashion. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've spoken to a couple. I've spoken to a couple of the design guys in various times, and as much as this might not be exciting, first of all, the game is finally in a state where this is competitive for a lot of armies, and secondly, all these designs have to work for people all over the learning curve. So it's quite crucial to have this because this supports getting a bunch of different units. In the beginning when you're making an army, you have like one of everything. Yeah. So this, yeah. So I guess compared to the current Saurians, this is going to be the stuff that's like the Temple Guard list, I suppose. The Temple Guard supported a bunch of stuff. Yeah. 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 And I think there's some hints that they might allow something monster-esque, not monstrous, but maybe like a large beast in core. Just looking at the general kind of army composition stuff that we skipped over, there seems to be hints for that. Yeah. Yeah, the turtle, angry, the war turtle. I mean, I doubt there'll be a proper monster in core, but it could be something like a combat version of the salamanders, for example, that could easily make it into. No. What I'm thinking more is that you might get like large beasts, so like salamanders, but maybe like a combat salamander type thing, which has got skink handlers, and then you're okay. I mean, the monsters are gonna stay, right? So I don't know if the other support pieces will quite change. The monsters themselves are probably going to get a bit more specialized because if you have multiple monsters, they all have to do a different thing to be useful, right? So at the moment, the Taurosaurs kind of do all the things. Taurosaurs, yeah, yeah, exactly. It would be nice to see how they try and balance the other things around them. I mean, I think the problem with that has been the skinks are typically super cheap. So, like in terms of how difficult the design is, the Sylvan Elves, when they come around, it'll be a lot harder because they're long range avoidance. With this, there's like a risk reward that I think it's probably doable to to make it so it's not horribly toxic, but then also actually feels like an avoidance army. I don't think when you played you ever went all in into the avoidance stuff. Uh, I mean, I've played against the list with like the 40 skirmishing skinks, the 4 needs of 10, and then all the support shooty dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. It does end up being mostly on skinks and very relatively little cleanup. But it's the same problem with the Taurosaurs, right? That whatever you take, you're gonna take two Taurosaurs at least and just plop them there because they also shoot and they avoid and they charge. So so yeah. Mm. I do wonder how they're going to try and encourage the more blocky elements of the army to come forward. I mean, even the specials like you got Cayman and you got Temple Guard, they see some use, but they're still generally kind of inferior to having mobile pieces. Mm. Yeah. It's possible that they might put monsters and shooting in one cap that's higher, so you can build lists that are very monstery or very shooty, but you always have that presence of the static pieces potentially. maybe, but it's the kind of thing that if you have three different army types and the best one is a mix of B and C, and if it's the best by a conceptual long shot, they need to somehow make the other things rise up to that level, or trim that down and then apply. I guess what you're describing is mixed arms. Yeah, mm. I mean, it's kind of yeah, it's kind of as expected, really. So you've got the renamed Saurian Saurus with Gila, something. So they're by description, it's pretty much the same as expected. Far physically with an orc or dwarf, but not very dexterous. Fine. I don't really expect the basic Saurian warrior to really change stats notably. Pretty much. Mm. I think that's gonna stay. So the I don't know if you've kept up with it, but Vermin Swarm is the other book that's in design, and they're dropping in resilience down to two. And by random blocks, like of plebs with halberds, so then they can just remove more skinks than they can goblins, for example. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's definitely not gonna be a thing. No. I mean, so I've been playing orcs and goblins in online events for this year, and I've been running poison goblins. And if their poison's inbuilt and unconditional on combos, it can work. You end up with an infantry block. I mean, the goblins are weapon skill 2 and toughness 3, so they're basically the same. Yeah, true. They're a bit worse. They're a bit worse than the goblins. The goblins are worth like 8 points a model with a spear. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. There is a critical low point value at which this becomes worth it, just because poison is such a pain. Yeah. No, probably. This is definitely suggesting that they're not going to be fighting a lot. Fine. Yeah, they're underrepresented. Yeah, definitely. I think this their description of them being very kind of fearless and independent just suggests to me a high natural discipline. That's I do wonder if I mean the other species discipline might drop a bit. Cold blood is very hard to map things out, right? Because it starts off basically being +2, but it decays faster. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Cayman, from the description of Cayman, it sounds like they're going to be that more independent unit. So you're going to have the Saurus and Skinks that kind of need the bubble, and then the Cayman are probably going to be that kind of flanky independent unit, which sounds useful. Well, they've mentioned somewhere in here that every species will have magic access. So there's going to be a Cayman wizard of some sort, most likely as well. I mean, they can make him ride some dinosaur, some really big beefy dinosaur. Yeah, I guess. I mean, the other bit is, or any other dinosaur. The other bit is there's four races in this, right? And the Quattro is only going to be represented in the Quattro, but it's going to be lots of different dinosaurs and four different species. I don't think they're going to be massively represented everywhere. I think three-ish units per 3-4 units per species is probably all you can hope. Yeah, I think there'll be a third Cayman unit for sure. I don't know what it's going to be. I mean, the big new thing is the big new thing is that they're apparently not going to be in leadership positions, so no more Quattro bubble. I mean, I think that's a good change personally because it's obviously the Quattro general BSB main wizard has been kind of the default for. Yeah, I think that will help break into other things, into other types of characters that do those. I mean, some of the equipment stuff is quite cool, right? It's saying they've got natural armor, but it's rare for you to supplement it. So you're talking about an army with like a medium armor save. So very similar to dwarfs, basically, where you're rarely like super heavy at 1 up or 2 up, but you've got a lot of 3 ups, 4 ups kicking around, 3 ups, 5 ups. Well, except some weird thing about magnets. So no, no idea. It's gonna be like some levitating, floating lizard things. I mean, this thing of using it to create constructs makes me think that they're gonna put some more. I wouldn't be surprised to see some more platforms and things. Well, this is it's gonna be a magnetic floating platform. I don't know, man. Over a dinosaur. Yeah, you don't have to feed it or anything. So yeah, repel. Yeah, floating magnet. This sounds like that like this, it just sounds like those troll science memes with the magnets. So silicon. Oh, yeah. I think isn't the Saurian book one of the books with the fewer unit entries in the game? I know ogres, I think, are the kings of having no units to pick from, but I think Saurians weren't too far behind. So they're probably trying to expand the background of giving them a couple of different things. Otherwise, you end up having like 8 types of dinosaur, and they're gonna end up being redundant because you can't make that many unique monsters that are all have a point and a reason. No, they said there's gonna be nothing. I don't know. I honestly, with the focus on infantry, my guess is on a war platform. Or 30 skinks. That might actually make it taken. I have no idea. Anyway, yeah. Does that use magnets? It's not magic. It's magnets. All right. Yeah. Magnet club, obviously. Yeah, it's very clear, isn't it? Slower than an elf and faster than an elf. Okay, elf is 5, so it's 4 and 6. Thanks. I I wonder if they're gonna go and start doing things like the dwarf type movement with different march rates just to make anvil and hammer units. No, I don't know either, but they could have. I get that this is written to give them some design space, but it's basically 4 and 6, isn't it? So yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And everything else in here, Marmy is not fast, but it's lateral, so we're talking monsters and skirmishers. Yeah, the usual current things, and then all the usual stuff. Yeah, Yeah, it's not common, really, is it? If you have rules, right? Because I remember this is kind of a tangent, but the Dark Elf Kraken has special rules for water, but doesn't have Water Strider. So it's like I'm really cool to be in this lake, but I'm not steadfast. So no, I think well, water stops you from being steadfast. I think if you leave a monster in water, we're a super professional podcast that doesn't know the rules. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Um, it's just well, you play with the guys who have water water things. I It's true. Yeah, water can't. Yeah. Anyway, you lose that busting water. But yeah, I think with this new fluff, they've kind of said that they don't only live in jungles. So I think they might not tie them to just water anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's basically just like Empire and Equitane. Your wizards have crap leadership, so they're not going to be a general. That's basically it, right? Yeah. Maybe they're not the kind of they're not really a general, right? So I mean, most I think that I think it's really rare in the game, but characters that can obviously get on a dinosaur, yes. I don't know if you can directly slap it on a dinosaur. That seems a bit weird because the fluff in here is that the dinosaurs are like not the mindless beasts most of the time. So, yeah. I mean that seems a moot point because you can take a guy and put him on a dinosaur and then give him a banner, so it's the same outcome. Take the engine. Yeah. I mean, it's worth noting that the BSB it doesn't have to be 0 1 as well, or it could be a version of the BSB that's like a 6-inch bubble and replicate it. I mean, I feel like this is what it's suggesting here in this paragraph, right? Because the very first paragraph is saying the leadership bubble should not be paramount, but given their communal nature and ability to draw support from their neighbors and allies, other mechanics representatives can be explored. That's very much that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, for skinks separately says there should be the exception to the need for leadership bubbles. So they'll probably keep that way. I imagine Gila or Saurus might get some sort of no, more like something to no more to themselves really than anything. Um, maybe if there's a source unit within six, another source unit within six or something, get +1 leadership discipline. Well, it makes like again coming from playing orcs and goblins, the size of the bubble for an infantry army is a real problem. So I have no I have no idea. I don't know this communal nature thing, how to interpret it. Yeah, creepy lizards, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even bees wound you on fives, that's when you know that if a bee can fuck you up twice as much as anything else. Yeah. All right. I mean, they can retain cold blooded for what it's worth. The whole point, this all this Kaiman rules just hinted them not interacting with the rest of the stuff as much. So I imagine, for example, that these Crocs units, the mixed stuff might go away. It's an absolute mess, isn't it? All right. Well, before that, it says characters should provide buffs, but not Empire level. They may provide buffs. That's kind of cool. Because other armies have been kind of told that the characters aren't allowed to help their units out, which gets difficult. Yeah. I mean, it's mostly the skinks are a better example, right? Because they give poison and hatred and all sorts of things to other skinks. If you did something like that for Saurus that's minor, it might be okay. Gila, sorry, not Saurus. Gila, Gila, yeah. What else? Oh, they're gonna have a higher magic item allowance, so 15 items instead of 10. That usually means, which is kind of cool. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, that's yeah. I think it's tough with the 15 because you have 5 item categories, and I think it's hard to come up with more than 3 things that are genuinely useful. So, I mean, so yeah, I mean, 15 items, 10 items normally means that you have your 5 categories of stuff, and you have either 2 or 3 in each category. 2 or 3, yeah. 2 each usually, yeah, you're right. Sometimes they're a bit imbalanced, sometimes they're not. 15 means three of each, and there's usually in some categories you kind of run out of ideas. So one good easy example is armor, because you have the default stuff that kind of ticks all the boxes of what you'd expect armor to do. Yeah, so yeah, living plates or whatever it's called, Death Cheater. That's right. And then you have Essence of Mithril, which is just two up armor that you can't modify, which is your cheap version to go almost all the way up. Um, and you have a bunch of like cheap shields and basalt infusion and all this kind of stuff that you see. I think it's quite rare to see a lot of army special armors because they don't provide anything different necessarily. Which isn't really present in any army anymore that I can. Yeah. Yeah, so that's I think I would struggle when faced with an army to come up with 15 different items. Although later on in this, it does mention that bound spells are meant to feature quite heavily. The the serrated shield, yeah. And I mean, the spear, having a spear in an army that wants to push infantry is pretty crucial because it motivates to be on foot. It's the only weapon you can only get on foot, right? So I think weapons are generally easier because the rulebook weapons are shitty, but the rulebook armors are good. Yeah. So you, or some blowpipe thing. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That's three weapons that all kind of feature. Well, that might not. We'll read up in a minute, but that sort of thing might be a bit over the top because they're kind of saying they're going to tone down the characters. Yeah, for cowboys and the like. So, depending on how much they simplify Quato, some of their magical abilities might get changed into being items other than skills. That's probably one of the ways that they're going to fill out the thing. Probably one for Skinks, one for Saurus, and then if you have one for Cayman, maybe for some reason. Yeah, true, true, true. Yeah. I mean, I've tried to push this through in the dwarf book when I was on design team. I do like the idea of a wide range of cheap items. So as long as they don't make too many of these 15 items too expensive, I think it's nice to have a bunch of cheap artifacts that you can kind of tack on for your last few points, and they do something narrow and specialized. Happening. Yeah. Well, we'll see. That's one of the things to keep an eye on, definitely. Yeah. So that's the only one. One attack is the only thing that goes down. Are they strength five at the heroes are strength four at the moment, right? Or are they strength five? Okay. Mm. Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, orc warlords do have a decent stat line, so I can see this working. It's very contingent. They lose one attack, but I mean, orcs have +1 strength and AP on the first turn of fighting, so the one attack is a big. Mm, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. No, probably not. I imagine they're trying to take that away from the cowboys and put it into dinosaurs, just because they're easier to balance. Yeah, and I mean, in the context of, I know we're skipping ahead, but they're gonna get access to druidism instead of pyro, which just means that cowboys will get so near impossible to balance properly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I yeah. I mean, the Cowboys are one of the. Yeah, I think what you're running is not really going to be a thing because that's kind of like an emergent playstyle that almost looks unintended. Mm. We kind of skipped over the Quatos here. Nothing that interesting in their entry except they have some access to strong telepathic powers which are magical in nature but can be used to do things beyond the normal paths. To me, that says no. I think this, to me at least, if I was a designer of this book, this hints to something more interesting being done for the hereditaries. So I wouldn't, for example, be surprised to see them being able to pick between more than one hereditary, or maybe have two hereditaries or something like that. That you think they can know at the same time. So almost like the way the cosmology is dual function, maybe Saurians will get a dual function hereditary. Just with, yeah. I haven't seen any reference to magic defense yet, but we'll get to that in a bit. I think that is suggesting ages saves for some reason. I don't really understand why Aquato, if they're not general BSB, would keep their ages, to be honest, but fine. Probably more of a flat thing. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Access to four. So this beyond the normal paths is what makes me think that this sounds like spells or things that you can do with veil tokens, maybe. Oh, maybe. Oh, Essence of Free Mind. Yeah, that's it. I mean, beyond the normal paths to me says that they're gonna do stuff that's not in the 10 paths of magic, right? But that's my interpretation. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the key to that interpretation is something more interesting than a magic missile in the hereditary. Either multiple hereditaries or something more flexible. Quite likely, yeah. Or a bunch of skill. Like they're gonna have a bunch of inbuilt things that make them expensive. But it probably I mean, like out of those three things, two of them make sense to not be chaff. So support casters, fine, you're not really chaff. Handling rare dangerous beast to me means they're gonna have some mounts that aren't available to normal skinks, which is fine. And it's just the scout thing that trips me up. I honestly don't know what that means. Maybe so the third option when they can be scouts, kings can be scouts characters. I don't know what they'll do with that. Maybe that's the sort of thing that you're gonna have a skin character who gives a unit his joint ambush, but then skinks can't operate. Skinks, well, skinks can't operate outside the bubble, right? According to the guidelines. So what the point? What's the point of that? You scout somewhere where you get panicked off immediately. Just hi, hi, bye. You gotta, yeah. No, it could be something to mess with terrain. Honestly, it could be one of a thousand things. They could set some booby traps. They could spawn a lake of piss, or they could have some magnets. I think it's a way to give them funky mounts, basically. It's a way to give some funky mounts in there. More, yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like the way that you can only get a Carnosaur if you as a mount. I imagine skink characters will get a special mount, and you take it for the mount, and it happens to have some dude. Yeah, basically that. Oh yeah, that's totally there. I don't know. It could be like a cool wizard conclave. Every additional frog gives you +1 to cast up to +2, +3. Well, the notable thing here says should not have mount options. So what we're talking about, Caemon's riding monsters, seems to not be a thing. Too fast. Yeah. I think the whole independence thing is means that, for example, because it's a crocodile, right? They're gonna maybe give. I think, for example, I think ambush, for example. So Caemon characters with ambush, I can see, especially the way that they're independent, the way exactly, except the characters. And there's, I mean, this guy is a crocodile, right? So that makes complete sense to me. The lake. That sort of hidden, that's not really in the game. I've had some chats about that, about hidden information design, and it's just not purposely not implemented. But what you can do is, I mean, yeah, exactly. It could be like the beastman beast that you just place in a forest at the beginning of your turn. You're like, "Hi, I'm here." I mean, yeah, if you're placing it at the beginning of your turn, you don't need to be scouting. But I know, that that's generally how I see it. Whether it's ambush or some weird rule like that, or a version of scout, I just see them just hanging out away from the main battle line, just being crocodiles, crocodile poets or whatever it is. Armor? Oh yeah, I mean, I think with Cayman characters, because they're gonna have a beefy profile. Um, I don't think they need to overthink the actual profile of the Cayman characters. If you give them a special ability that helps with mobility and deployment, the basic profile of monstrous creatures, monstrous characters. Four HP strength. I mean, 4 HP, strength 5, war attacks, toughness 5. Done. Yeah, you don't have to be astronomically expensive or anything. So better casting, more spells, telepathic, magic defense. Okay, here's the magic defense thing. Fair enough. But not simultaneously in all. I mean, the demons get what +2 to cast for spells on 1 and 2 dice, right? Whereas the Quattro gets it for everything. I mean, that's from one caster, right? So I think the Quattro, as it is, we've had a very quick text argument, but I think he is very close on a model to model basis to the demon caster. I mean, I think the pressure to have the Quattro be that crazy good on his own, now that there's not necessarily only one per army because he's not the general, isn't on him as much. So he just needs to be a solid caster. I think the DL Sentinel, who has what does he have? He obviously gets the natural rules for +1 to cast. He gets the converting tokens thing by default, so that's his special ability. He gets basically an extra dice, which is very big. Yeah. So he gets +1 plus an extra one to cast in some situations and +1 dice. So that's kind of the highest, the best caster in the game at the moment, I'd say. Yeah, I didn't count that because that seems like if he couldn't convert the dice, that would matter. But because he can, it doesn't. If that makes sense. Do you reckon? Yeah, exactly. I guess his conversion thing is contingent on not charging, but that seems very very minor. Anyway, let's we assume that this is the benchmark, right? The Sentinel of Nukuja is the bestest caster in the most castiest army, so he is the best. And then the Quattro is gonna be around that level if he's in the running for best single. No, I mean I think it's well, to be fair though, the cat. I think the Quattro on a model basis is gonna be close to the Sentinel, and then it keeps the next paragraph says how this army a single magic user isn't the norm, so you're gonna have multiple wizards, and Cayman and Gila and Skinks can be wizards now. So I think the Quattro being roughly Sentinel level and then naturally having support from someone else will probably end up being, up there. not very. Well, I mean, it's too late now. It's in the guidelines, so that's. He's probably going to be a smidgen under, I imagine, because the Sentinel does he does the extra dice and the plus to cast at the same time and the third die. It sounds like the Quattro has to be choose one of the things to be good at. So maybe it's it's either gonna be on a list level or at best you'll be at the beginning of the game. You get to choose. Like the Lamasu does it in ID, where your opponent weirdly gets to choose whether you generate an extra veil or you know an extra spell. So I guess if the Quattro chooses itself, that'll be quite strong. So Quattro can either know a fifth spell, or it can get +1 to cast, or generate 3 veil tokens, or whatever magic, or whatever. Yeah, magic defense. I don't know what that means for magic defense, to be honest. Yeah, that's an option. After spending so long trying to create magic defense for dwarfs, I'm just very skeptical because being defensive against magic is very inefficient. But it'd be cool if there was one option, and it's probably gonna be almost never taken because conceptually it's shit. So it has to be stupid strong. Then it's fine. Exactly. Yeah, because there's gonna be one matchup in 20 where your magic doesn't matter and you just want to stop some spells, and that's you. Yeah, maybe. I can see it. Oh, is the norm? Oh, okay, fine. So you do one Quattro. Misread this. Okay. I mean, if they make the Quattros have a cool skill that puts them above and beyond, I think they'll still get taken. Because people do tend to invest in the Wizard Masters if there's something that's worth taking. Yep. Yeah. And if you got 15 items, you could have at least 3 or 4 of those be various bounce spells. Magnet reliant. All right. Forgot what I said as the magnet phrase, but that was definitely a good title for if this was a podcast. Okay, so path axis. So Skinks and Gila have shamanism and druidism, which, as you said, it is a threat to them being single masters because both of these things on a master are kind of strong. Shamanism, especially, the more I use it, the more I'm becoming convinced that shamanism is the best lore in the game. I mean, yeah, obviously we can argue with a million people, but it's definitely the top half of 10 lores. It's incredibly useful, incredibly flexible. and even then, it's a bad magic missile because it's still I've got solid combat buff. The first and last spells are basically universally useful. Then you have four spells that are conditional, but when you have two spells that are almost universally fantastic, then you can generally always find something to pick between the other ones. I'm not even sure they're shittier than Phase Judgment, to be honest. Very much. They are notably easier to cast, though. They're notably easier to cast. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the bees, but they are conditional because they don't penetrate armor, same as Phase Judgment. So. Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of like very narrow matchups where Fates is just a big threat because it can one shot like a Vermin Demon if you're very unlucky. And technically speaking, Beast could one shot a Vermin Demon as well if you're very lucky. So the big news is no more Pyro because Pyro is I guess too unsubtle and to get Druidism, which Druidism I think this is a weird decision, right? Because I do see in the background how Druidism works with everything that they're doing. But in an army so focused on monsters, it feels like it's gonna be very difficult to balance. Hmm, I don't know. Unless you have stuff to heal. No, I mean heal. You don't need Throne to heal. You need Throne to res. If they're healing, they become useful. I think one of the ways they might work to incorporate this, because it's not just the Quato, it's also the Skinks and Saurus that can take it. I have a feeling they're gonna take a lot of the dinosaurs, give them a bigger wound pools, and lower their stats, just to make each individual wound lower value. Otherwise, it's just going to be such a go-to. Oh, not massive, but yeah, I know what you mean. It could be an armor decrease is the other option. So yeah, I think that to me, if I was in the designer's shoes and I was faced with having to tackle this head on, I would start there at the beginning. So otherwise, I'm gonna get to the end of this and suddenly realize that when you have high value monsters with Aegis saves from that, yeah, and I would have said maybe they can put it behind like an ability because chances are the Quato might have to pick an ability associated with each of these things. But if the Skinks and Xauros have it, it doesn't matter. So they have to work that one. And then Well, that's the thing. I think if you make the monsters have cheap wounds, so big wound pool, but lower quality ones, they don't need druidism then, because the druidism doesn't do that much for them, relatively speaking. So I think that's what. I mean, druidism monster list is what is it combated with? It's combat. That's what it's combated with. It's druidism is a very weird lore because it stalls the game, right? You can't outshoot it because shooting in the game is generally kind of shitty. Um, and it's a combat lore, so you also don't really want to fight it. Uh, so I don't know how they'll get around that, but the really biggest issue is very good value with monsters and probably completely worthless without. So we'll see. Uh, have, yeah, it's a combat lore, and if they do get better infantry, you could see it coming back in. Oh, exactly. Get the full value because you're overwriting your. Yeah, absolutely. I there's definitely other circumstances where it gets higher value. So if some of the really good monsters are ridden monsters, you want a way to remove champions, and so then the application has got a usage there. It's not great, but it does help. On top of the buffs they already have. I feel like cosmology in Ninth Age got attached to elves in general because all three of them have it. I don't know. It's like the elven thing. No, it's thaumaturgy that you're thinking of. That's the divination is actually fits with the telepathy and all that kind of stuff. That's it's fine. The background wise, it's a good match. The one that's weird, I would say, out of that set actually, the alchemy, like flavor wise, considering they have no metal and shitty armor piercing, blah blah blah. Suddenly, yes. I mean, if you hover over the spell list, see it's quicksilver, iron, gold, silver, tin. I mean, I guess that's kind of the background. That's the background of Quatos bringing something that the other races don't have. So they're bringing. To be fair, looking at this list, the army has access to five lores, which is five full lores, quite likely, which is a lot compared to most books. So that's already nice and flexible. Uh, So what we're talking before, so just something cosmology like, flexible and fiddly, probably. That would be broken. Yeah, broken. Yeah. Unnerving strike, unnerving strike. It's really so unnerving that it. I don't think it's gonna be that. Definitely, not. It's gonna be something around magnets. Like you, yeah, just pull an enemy unit give super frenzy is magnetically attracted to the quarter. Emphasis on poison. Or Carol's motion, but yeah. It's a tangent. Never mind. Carry on. There's some beast short range, fine. Uh, I don't understand what the hell. Is this gonna be like a railgun? Just, just oh man. Is it like, I don't know, like a magnetic boomerang? You throw it and then it comes back? It's just, yeah, great. Uh, I don't see why that engine would retain the ability to metal ship shoot anything, to be honest. Like, the engine's gonna get reworked, surely. Yes, it does, but the bar isn't very high. So, I'm very interested in what they're gonna do with the magnets now, to be honest. Force powers, like a force push. They okay, but they didn't use magnets. Yeah, I no, that is what a sorcerer is already. But yeah, okay, fine. We'll see. Uh, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right, all right. They can do magnets, fine. Like the Gungan vision is great. Okay. Yeah, yeah. That's gonna be in the items as well, magnet helmet. But it's gonna be magnet armor. They're gonna call it something different, but it could repel bullets. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe a magnet shield give you super parry. You only get hit on fives. It doesn't repel. We just went through that. The magnetic shield attracts the weapon, right? So you parry better. Yeah, yeah. That could work for good character. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, with a no nail, because nail is magnetic, right? So it's a rock. Oh man. Okay. Close combat. Grinding oriented, good defense, decent damage output. This is basically the dwarf spec. Fine, I'm sure. We are tough and we okay. Shitty agility. Yeah. As good armor says, but not crazy. So as we said, averaging armor, middling armor. Yeah. Skinks combat, avoid it at all costs. So that means parry. That what that means is parry, and maybe some specialist banner that gives them distracting, so you can't hit. Oh, distracting without parry might be okay. But yeah, trolls have that. So, you know what I mean? They might do something to try and encourage people to take 40 skinks in a blob. I guess not. I guess not. It's because people have models. Yeah, yeah, true. It's gonna be the third angry pterodactyls. Yeah, this tells you Torosaurs will be the best monster in shorthand. I think so. Yeah, it's a very odd thing to calculate, and it slows the game down, which is unnecessary. Like I honestly don't think the basic Gila or Saurius or whatever I don't think they need any specials at all because their profile is decent. They just need to be costed fair. It's it's jumping through hoops to give because if they do anything like that, they're gonna drop into strength three. No, 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 that's a special unit. No, that's only one. So orcs are basically toughness four and strength three. There's one unit that's four and four. So yeah, so it's, what I'm thinking is the vanilla core Gila. I genuinely don't think, other than whatever army-wide rule they give them, I don't think they need anything because they're slightly, by virtue of having two attacks default, and they're marginally better than most equivalent things. As long as they have the right support, they're perfectly fine as they are. I mean, they had the totems before, right? So they might put something like that in there. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it would end up being battle focus if it's plus one to hit. But yeah, I know what you mean. It could be. It could be. Whatever applies to the Gila would probably also apply to the Cayman. We'll- yeah, true. Generic dudes. I personally think that anything like that is wasting good design space for other cool things in the book because I don't think there's much you can do with Gila blocks that will make them exciting other than give them support in the form of banners and magic that actually works with them. I like having a vanilla unit in each army, right? The one unit is just there and it just does basic things. Although saying that, none of most of the new books that have come out give the vanilla unit something special. So you're probably more on the ball. I mean, the new books is more like the Infernal Dwarfs have fighting extra rank on their basic warriors. Um, Dark Elves have like a million things on each unit. All right, cool. Kings die. Fine. That seems just as it is now, basically. I mean, they might still do that because on an elite unit, 5 is not abnormal, so they could just have that. But that's the thing on a defensive skill 5 on a defensive unit, on an elite unit is kind of normal. I think it's pretty average. I mean, orcs have it, and that's kind of plebs, the pleb level of things. Elves goes to 6 for both, I suppose. Yeah, yeah. This makes it's fine. The better the basic stat is, the more options you have in how to kit things out, and the less things are mandatory. So that's a good thing. Okay, that makes sense to me. Because if you're a close ranged army, your buffs are more likely to be relevant than your debuffs. You don't have the reach to check. Yeah, yeah. No, I know what you mean. Well, but the background is that they're communal, right? So they are apparently very organized. I mean, the sentence is there should be some minor but innate synergy to units which are functioning in harmony. Which is, that's unfortunately. I think that's going to be focused mostly on Saurus. Saurus, in what you're describing, Saurus get left out. So they're going to get artificially buffed. You know, synergy, literally. Yeah, it's going to be something similar, I imagine. Weirdly enough, I think it's not going to be in the skinks because they said the skinks need bubbles. It's going to be, I think, on Saurus, and it's going to be something like similar to what I said, which is like if you have another unit of Saurus around you, you get cold-blooded maybe or +1 discipline or something like that. And it's going to be aimed at letting you maintain like a wide battle line without being stuck to a bubble. That's my guess. That's my educated. I'm just always cold. They do poison. That's the thing. Oh, you could make them so they only hit on sixes after moving if they're in close range or something. Yeah. Yep. I don't think they're gonna give that to the Skinks. I do think it's gonna be Soros that they get some sort of communal benefits. We'll see what those are. This is what I dislike the most in this because when you tell a bunch this society apart, when you tell this where was this? This essay book should strive to maintain a feeling that is completely foreign and an alien race. When you tell that to a bunch of people who are on the Ninth Age design team, they're just gonna make up a lot of random shit that has nothing to do with the main book and the game, and just make up special rules for the sake of special rules. I just think this is greenlighting all the worst things in design. The plot totally, yeah. So they hmm, this is what I mean. Somebody's gonna make like a spear that's not a spear that gives +1 strength but not +1 AP, and it's just like, oh, it's like the Temple Guard clubs all over again. Just stuff that complicates the game for no real gain. So I just don't like how this is worded, um, because I just think in general design should always root into the main game because we're all playing the same thing, right? And then you use the combinations of those rules to make something that feels special. Yeah, yeah, mm, yeah, yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna bring up. It's gonna be like those demon. There's like six different manifestations that give you +1 strength under different conditions, but they don't all give you +1 strength. Some of them give +1 strength, some of them give +1 AP, +1 strength and +1 AP if it's Tuesday and you're facing west, and and it's just like yeah, exactly, exactly. So hopefully this is a problem that is exponentially terrible if the designers aren't very good. Um, and I don't really recognize who's been tagged into this, so I can't make a comment on that. But it if I was again, if I was on team, I would just ignore that and just work like a normal human being. Um, yeah, loads of strider and some of those kind of rules that we talked about the Cayman characters, like ambushing from terrain and stuff like that. It's probably gonna here and there. Yeah, if that's an army-wide special, I can see it. Otherwise, it would be too complex. But that would be cool. That would definitely be cool. Only like only three pieces of terrain. There's three. There's only four pieces of terrain, so it's not that big of a rule. If it's the because Spencers give you enough of those rules. I feel it's just a grass basically. Right. I mean, most things just get Strider for that piece of terrain. I wouldn't be surprised if the entire book got Strider everything, to be honest, by that logic, and just took no DTs at all, or Strider everything except ruins, maybe. Oh, Strider Water Forest is all you need, really, because that's all. They don't have any chariots, so the fences don't matter. So yes, yeah. Yeah, yeah, work. As long as it's again, as long as it's not too complex for the sake of it. I know what you mean. It could be one generic all terrain because all terrain is really them fighting on a steady footing in an awkward piece of terrain, basically. You could give them distracting. Could give them plus defensive skill, for example. That's a pretty basic one. Plus two defense if you're the majority in a terrain, yeah. 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 Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Might have to be specific terrain. But all right. No, all the birds are large. They're I think they go up to Um, the only thing that's really notable here for me is that there should be wild and feral. So that's kind of what wild and feral. Feel weird, wild and feral. Feral. Feral? Feral. Yeah. Furry. So if they're kind of feral and wild, you're not really gonna see a dinosaur that's a BSB. That's what I was getting at. Crazy and unreliable, and it's just I guess if you're considering the banner like way. Yeah, I mean we're talking like Flintstones kind of level here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean they'll definitely give them a lot of things, and that's what I was getting at in terms of you could get small dinosaurs in core, like you could get riderless raptors in core, similar function to how other armies use hounds, for example. It's more beast, I suppose. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's yeah, the small raptors you kind of have to have them in there, don't you? So basically mandatory. Especially if the Scrox thing goes away, yeah, then you need them. That I mean, that could be so many things because they're gonna get more dinosaurs, right? And at the moment, you have three big ones, or kind of three big ones anyway. I mean, I wasn't counting the Vestigio. So the turtle, the Torosaur, and the Carnosaur is a big thing. But it's oh, okay, fine. Okay, four-ish. I don't really know. Well, you got two levels. Well, you got two levels of Carnosaur, right? So that's five. Okay, fine. And then you and the small Carnosaur stuff is fine as well. And then you have two. the two birds as well. So at the moment you have nine different dinosaurs actually. Super, yeah, angry. I think they're making the point that Kaimos aren't going to be writing anything. Looking at this between the lines, they could do like the Brontosaurus massive dinosaur thing on like 100 times 150 base, like the sauropod, the biggest. Yeah, exactly. To go into the early learning center and buy whatever kindergarten toy they can. I hope it's not actually a Godzilla because you already have the Carnosaur. But I think a sauropod, like the four-legged herbivore things, would be quite cool. Literally like the Flintstones. But then you're gonna have just three. You're gonna have four different Carnosaur-looking things, basically raptor-shaped dinosaurs. Yeah, yeah. It's I'm coming exactly from the high of which who have eagles, griffins, and then three levels of dragon, and you're just like, this is five things that do the same thing basically. How many? It's one too many, definitely. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't think they're gonna give it something that's angry like Godzilla. It's like gonna be something that's really chill and harmonious with all the other lizards. So it'd be like a big herbivore. They just hang around and just be big. That's what it's gonna be. I think. Just you just place the dinosaur on top of an objective, and it just unshiftable from there. I like how confident you are with this, but I'd like to remind you that the Dark Elves decided they don't have a centerpiece, so they gave them a jellyfish. So, I mean, I've seen the film, the one with Respect. Cool. This is you're basically right. I mean, you're advertising being like Forge World for Ninth Age, just massive models that look weird, just for fun this year. Yeah. What you're saying is basically probably gonna make it into an auxiliary book, which is gonna be like the biggest monsters, because that's what auxiliary books are. There for all these things that can't quite get back. So I agree. Funny. It'd be exactly like an auxiliary book. I've been playing cultist in events for like 2 or 3 events, and they are exactly that one-dimensional, funny thing that you run for a bit, and then you're like, okay, yeah, let's not bother. I'm 100% sure that they're gonna put a massive dino on 100 times 150 base. I just don't think it's gonna be raptor shaped. That's all. It's gonna be the brontosaur. Just remove a forest. Hey, it's that's the forest, and the forest disappears. It's not there anymore. What? Yeah, but you know the beastmen giants can get a club from forest. Maybe that heals wounds when it grazes. Yeah? Grazing and farm. No, look, it could be a giant sauropod, and it could be a mount for Quattro, and it could just have 2d6 stomps. Yeah, Lord was the back in the day, the mum. Yeah, makes sense. But I mean, it's gonna be good in combat anyway. It's gonna be a good combat unit if they make it anyway. I just think this is the most likely outcome of the. We shall see. Should we make a bet on this? That's true. We'll record it, put it on the we'll see there. All right. This is this is luckily the end of it. Okay, we both agree that there's gonna be a massive dinosaur because I think that's a given. I think it's gonna be sauropod based. Yeah, I think it's gonna be herbivorous. Herbivorous. It's gonna be a vegan. All right, cool. All right, and we're gonna bet what we're betting. It's gonna have to end up being some sort of random forfeit, right? No? Okay. I mean, I'll probably get us some STLs and I'll print you something. But yeah, sure, sounds good. I mean, I can't use a brontosaur, but you can tell you what, if you can always use a brontosaur. Do you know what? I have one in my garden because my fiance uses one as a flower pot, so she might enjoy it. Yeah, I'll take a picture for it. All right, sounds good. All right, well, that's the end of the spoiler. I am looking forward to this book because I think it's first of all going to be less toxic than the current one, And secondly, there's a lot of really weird challenges in there that I'm just curious how they're gonna approach. Yeah, we'll see. So you're gonna have some handlers in there, but you can have a majority like beasts, wild beasts being wild. Yeah, I guess that's the if we're calling one Jurassic Park, that's probably like the Kobold D&D version where you have like a Kobold army. Yeah. And then you have the gorilla, just lizardman cunt nonsense, which which is the fiddly movement. Maybe. I think that's where the mounts are coming because they're gonna try and give them funky things to ride that aren't available outside of characters. I think. We'll see. Yeah, the new books have been promising, so I think it's this potential, but we'll see what happens. This they're getting progressively more complicated as they go along in terms of what books need to design. But we'll cover that, I guess, next time we chat. Because we said we'll do catch up on Dark Elves as well. Thanks. Bye.